Hey, welcome back. So having a look at Hannut or Hannut, depending on how you want to pronounce that. I'm sure there's an appropriate way to do that. We can all check in with folks that know more than me about how to do it, or how to pronounce it. So here's the deal. I thought it might be worthwhile in the first instance having a look at the victory conditions and where units set up and all that sort of fun stuff before we actually jump into the gameplay, and then we can see what actually transpires. I'll do some update videos like I usually do, and we'll do some check-ins. Interesting to note that this sort of yellowish terrain is actually clear, even though it's a slightly different color on the tech chart. I just noticed that like this very moment. Rough terrain is pretty easily seen as rough terrain, and woods and forest are clearly delineated as well, so that's nice. Lots of points of interest and vantage points and things like that are going to make a difference in the gameplay, depending on what we're trying to do here. The scenario starts with 4th Panzer, I think it is, here, 4th Panzer. Let's zoom in a little bit there. Entering the game space over here, and while it's called the Battle of Hannut, here's Hannut here, really the effort is focused on the Germans progressing to basically this road line here, and you can see these numbers underneath. There's a 2, right, and there's a 3 here. These are VP locations that I've got marked out there, right? You can see that. And then, of course, exiting off of the supply area of the French and capturing this town here for 5 VPs would be a major coup. Now, the other thing that is important is basically along this line, from this hex to this hex, if there is not a unit, a French unit, at least one every 3 hexes, with some conditions around that in terms of who else can be, in between, then that's going to cost the French VPs, and there are automatic victory conditions that are tied to that, and I think to the supply zones back here. If they're captured outright, then the game ends automatically. Now, facing off against that 4th Panzer, and that's only the initial formation that joins. There are multiple other divisions that enter the map later. Initially, these 2 divisions. So we've got, now I actually don't recall the full names of these formations, and it's in the magazine, which I don't have, but we've got 2 French, basically armored and mechanized formations. So we've got battalions of mechanized infantry and French tank formations here. Same again down here. And both of these will set up one within X number of hexes of here. I think it's 6, but not north of here, roughly. And then these guys have to be within 5 hexes. These guys have to be within 5 hexes of this spot here, right? So it's a really interesting set of pretty open terrain. There are tracks and roads, and then I think secondary roads and major roads. These are major roads, I'm guessing. Yes, they are primary roads, and these are secondary roads. The tracks don't help as much as you would think, but they are viable for getting through light forests and things of that nature. Let me just zoom in on this area here a little bit, and we'll have a look at the terrain. So it's pretty open, and lots of roads to maneuver on. So where the French will set up and what defensive points they will take is really something I'm very unclear about how I should go about. It's going to take a little bit of fiddling around to work out whether we defend forward or defend back. Not a lot in the backfield here to hook things on. There's a stream here, and there's some stream in rough and then wide open, some rough terrain, another stream, and then here's a stream that we could potentially defend along. Pretty tough. Maybe an opportunity, depending on the formations and when they arrive, that these guys, if they could hold this flank here, that they could counterattack and potentially cut supply off for the Germans. Maybe that's an option in the gameplay. Don't know yet. There are, I believe, at least 3 more divisions of Germans participating in the initial assault, so it's going to be pretty hefty. We'll get into game mechanics and rules and things like that. We'll talk through Goss Light in a little bit, and we'll see how things go from there. But let's. I thought I'd just share that for the moment. We'll have a look where we set up. I'll come back and check in with you when that's all done. Ciao.